U-Boat might be the most immersive World War II submarine game since Silent Hunter, but it's not for everyone. So if you've spotted it in a Steam sale and you're wondering if it's actually worth buying, this video will help you decide. I'll give you a quick 60-second summary, show what it's actually like to play, and finish with who the game is really for, plus a look at the DLCs and mods. So let's dive in. Set throughout World War II, you'll be the commander of your own German U-boat, issuing orders to your crew as you attempt to complete missions from destroying enemy shipping, dropping off a spy on the shores of Britain, or recovering an Enigma machine. While back at base, you'll need to make sure you have enough supplies for the mission ahead, while recruiting and promoting your crew. The game is incredibly flexible. At a very high level, you could simply issue orders on a map telling your U-boat where to go, how fast, and at what depth, while you manage supplies such as diesel, electricity, and breathable air, to name but a few, locking on and shooting torpedoes with a few clicks. Dive deeper though, and you can create rotors and issue orders directly to your crew from a side view of the U-boat itself. Or there's a first-person view where you can do everything manually by hand with a staggering amount of detail. So if you like the sound of stalking the Atlantic while playing hide and seek with British destroyers and researching new technologies with the option to spend hours manually calculating the trajectory of torpedoes yourself, U-Boat might be your cup of tea. If that hasn't put you off, then grab a drink and get comfortable as we look through the detail of what you actually do in and what it's like to play U-Boat. As you start the game, you have several scenarios to choose from throughout World War II. Broadly speaking, the earlier in the war, the easier the game, reflecting the reality that, at first, U-boats had relatively free reign, but as technology and tactics developed, life became far more challenging for the U-boat captains. Beyond that, you have three clear preset options of entertaining, balanced, and hardcore. This is absolutely key, because at one end of the spectrum, U-boat can be a rather arcadey experience that any gamer can pick up and enjoy. But at the other end of the spectrum, you could experience this game as a one-for-one simulation of detailed and epic proportions. This game attempts to cater for all, and to some extent it does succeed. This continues where you can choose your crew management levels from minimal, intermediate to expert, further optimizing the game to your style of play. Then, after a final tweak to the detailed settings, you can choose the look, sound, and name of your character who will captain the U-boat, before proceeding to port for a brief tutorial before getting your U-boat underway. So what do you actually do in U-boat? You can select from a variety of missions. Most involve sinking a certain tonnage of shipping in a certain area of the North Sea or Atlantic. But there are others to mix things up, such as mine laying near the British coast, helping a fellow U-boat that's been damaged, recovering an Enigma machine from a wreckage, or even dropping off a spy in Ireland. There is variety, but the reality is you will mostly be sinking commercial vessels, but unexpected missions will be issued mid-mission, but the mission objectives themselves aren't where the fun lies. Just getting to a particular location undetected is the real challenge, and where the game excels. You might be surprised to hear that U-boats spent most of their time travelling on the surface of the water. Unlike modern subs, which can be under the waves for months at a time, your U-boat only has so much air and electricity, not to mention that you'll slowly take on water through tiny holes in your U-boat, all of which limits the time you can spend under the waves. But being above the waves, in broad daylight, in the English Channel, is a surefire way to get yourself killed. So the real joy of this game is juggling all of these factors to get to your mission location, execute the mission, and then extracting back to safer waters without drawing attention. Taking out an unarmed merchant vessel is relatively straightforward. You line up at a 90-degree angle, one of your officers needs time to calculate the right trajectory for your torpedoes to give them the best chance of hitting, and then you push a button to launch a few, waiting a while to see whether they hit the target. However, if your U-boat gets spotted by a plane, or worse, an enemy destroyer, you are in seriously big trouble. You do have an anti-aircraft gun, and it is perfectly possible to take out a single plane, but this is definitely not a game where you can just launch unlimited torpedoes and take out a group of British destroyers single-handedly. Stealth is always the best defense, using the cover of darkness or bad weather as an opportunity to resurface and replenish your air and recharge your batteries before diving beneath the waves as you approach a patrol hotspot. Oh, and you can use your deck gun to finish off crippled merchant ships to save on torpedoes, which can be particularly fun. Actually detecting ships is an art form in of itself. You'll receive the occasional radio message giving you a clue as to where some shipping might be. Otherwise, you'll have to dive and get your hydrophone pinging to give you a lead on where ships might be. You can spot them from the surface with binoculars, but the curvature of the Earth, let alone the weather, means diving and using your hydrophone is far more effective. Even then, you'll be lucky to get an exact location on a ship. You'll more than likely get a general idea of where they are, how fast they're moving, and in which direction, at which point the hunt begins. Now, you can simply ask your officers to plot an intercept course, but it's also possible to get your ruler and pencil out to plot over multiple hydrophone readings the approximate direction and speed of the enemy ship, so you can manually calculate an intercept course. This is a real good example of the flexibility of this game. Yes, you can do some crazily detailed simulation things, but if you see that as a bad thing, you can have some great fun delegating most tasks and taking the big picture view. If you don't have the settings automated, then your ship and your crew will require detailed management. While out on a mission, much of the ship management is dictated by time spent above and below the waves, balancing your available resources while ensuring you remain undetected. If you do take some damage, a couple of leaks won't end your mission, as your mechanics can fix a lot of the problems. But you need to make sure you have enough supplies on board, either having purchased them back at base or robbed them from a sunken ship. There's simply so much you can do, but my personal favourites are changing the lighting in your U-boat to match the scenario, as well as crash diving and asking the crew to run silent as enemy ships pass overhead. Managing your crew can also be incredibly detailed. Everyone has a job. In particular, you have officers with skills that make them a radio operator or an engineer who will fix leaks or care for the engines. Below them, you have general sailors who can be allocated to specific officers, which boosts whatever that officer is doing. So allocating sailors to the officer looking after engines will boost their efficiency, that sort of thing. In tense situations, a crew member can panic, which is particularly inconvenient when you're currently running silent as destroyers circle overhead, ready to target the slightest noise. A panicking sailor will need to be taken care of, and also tired sailors will benefit from some coffee. Both your ship and your crew can be managed by detailed rotors, which you can tweak to ensure processes are optimized. For example, scheduling a dip below the waves each hour to automatically take a hydrophone reading to see if enemy ships are nearby, without you having to manually order it each time. Your officers gain experience over time, and eventually you can level up certain skills. You'll have many to choose from, so if you want your engineer to be great at keeping the diesel smoke to a minimum, or increasing your radio man's first aid abilities, you have plenty of options. You can also promote sailors to officer positions and fire those who display a tendency to panic all the time. You can even send officers to headquarters to research new technologies. Similar to Hearts of Iron 4, you can research technologies prior to when they were actually introduced in the war, but there is a time penalty for doing so, which keeps technology from getting too out of hand. There are many types of U-boats for you to command, reflecting the advancement in U-boat design throughout the war. But during a particular campaign, you can upgrade many different parts of your U-boat. Want a bigger anti-aircraft gun? You can get one of those. Want an improved hydrophone with a better range? Whack one of those on there. And many more. Hopefully by now you have an idea of what it's like to actually play U-boat, so let's address some other more practical considerations that might affect your purchasing decision. The tutorial in this game is minimal at best. Even if you want to take the easiest hands-off route, you'll likely need to dive into U-Boatpedia, a very useful but 219-page document that tells you how to do everything. A couple of hours and some reading will be enough to get you started, but if you want to go full-on simulation, you'll need to put many hours into the game. If you're rushing through a mission, speeding up the time to fast-forward your journeys, you are kind of missing the point of the game. As such, this game is best for those with a good 2 to 3 hours to play per session to really get the most out of it. U-Boat is a single-player experience only. The game has a DLC about to release, or it may well have done by the time you watch this video. The DLC gives you the opportunity to use a newer type of U-boat with the ability to reach more distant lands. Basically, the DLC moves the focus away from the North Sea and North Atlantic. There are so many mods for this game, but here are some of the more interesting ones to give you an idea. The most popular is the World War Radio mod, which gives music and news broadcasts suitable to the year, time of year, and the location, which is great for immersion. There's Das Book, providing useful tables and charts for those who want to get more hands-on with calculations. There's a weather mod that provides insane levels of detail, with a mod that adds realistic leaks when you start to dive a bit too deep. Basically, if you like a good mod, then this game has a lot to keep you happy for a long time. UBOAT is almost always on sale with a 70% discount, so there really is no need to pay full price ever. So with all that said, is UBOAT right for you today? As always, it depends who you are. If you love World War II immersion in general, then UBOAT is a no-brainer. Not only is the attention to detail enough to impress any World War II fanatic, the flexibility in difficulty settings results in a bespoke experience, from somewhat arcadey to full-on U-boat simulation. Although there are some explosive, dramatic moments in U-boat, the running theme is that of patience, choosing your moments wisely, managing your resources, and for the most part, avoiding conflict. If that sounds a bit boring to you, best steer clear of U-boat. If you're a casual gamer just looking for something to play, then this is difficult. On the one hand, the game can cater to those that want an easygoing experience. But ultimately, if you've no real interest in the World War II setting, then you'd be missing the best aspects of the game. So again, I'd avoid if this sounds like you. If you like the sound of performing your own calculations for torpedo targeting, getting hands-on with the hydrophone, and generally having an insanely detailed experience with a U-boat, then the chances are you already own this game. But if you don't, then what are you waiting for? If you have any further questions, please feel free to ask, or if you already own the game and have some additional information you'd like to add, please let us all know in the comments below. If you found the video useful, please leave a like for the algorithm gods. And if you enjoy city builders, grand strategy, RTS, or just this style of review, consider subscribing for more content, and I'll catch you in the next one. See ya.